maybe it's not a bad day for you. Tell someone, ittaqillah, he gets angry. What do you mean, ittaqillah? What do you see is wrong with me? Why don't you ittaqillah? Huh? Yeah, upset like that. It's a good reminder, ittaqillah. It's not an insult, you know? طيب. So here, you tell him ittaqillah, and he's led by arrogance to do more crime. This is a statement from Imam Ibn al-Qayyim, rahimahullah. He said, and really, really a strong statement. He said, your happiness with committing a sin is far more condemned by Allah than the sin itself. And because of your lack of Hayaa. So you could do a sin, and it could be, if you want to say this term, it could be a small sin, but you're so happy at doing it. There's absolutely no shame and no regret in doing it. That happiness and that lack of shame can be worse on the scale than the sin itself. And you can probably imagine many things that they're small if you do them, but if you do them and you're happy that you're doing it, no shame, it could be worse. That feeling is worse than just doing the act itself. And so, when you have Hayaa, someone would commit a sin and he would do it without any enjoyment because he has Hayaa, or if they're aware that Allah Azza wa Jalla is watching them. So this obviously makes it easier for the person to repent from the evil deed. And the opposite now, some people when they commit a sin, and this is part of the, they want, I don't want to use the word sweetness of the sin, but they get this extreme pleasure from the sin. One of the stories of one of the early Muslims that I really find just scary and it will make your stomach sick. There was a man from the early Muslims, and he used to, he was married, but he used to go and commit adultery. So his wife found out about that, and she went and she traded places with that woman. And of course, there are no lights, and so they would go in the dark. So she traded places with that woman, and her husband came upon her thinking she's the one he's, let's just say, cheating with. I don't like that term, but can't think of anything else. And then in the morning, he comes home. So his wife tells him, how was last night? He says, I was there and there. He made some lies. She tells him, I was that woman that you went to last night in that place. So you know what he said to her? He said, أعوذ بالله ما أحلاك في الحرام وما أقبحك في الحلال. He said to her, how wonderful and sweet you are when it's haram, and how horrible you are when it's halal. أعوذ بالله. It was sweet for him. It's the same woman. It was sweet for him when he thought it was doing something haram. But when he found out it's halal, it's horrible. So this is the effect of the sin, when the people get used to it and it has a certain sweetness and they enjoy it more even than the halal. Even when they discover this was the same thing, they find that they enjoyed that more. That's one of the evil things. And also the sin, you can get used to it. As one sheikh was using an example, I'm just going to use his example. So let's say there's a brother who had a mashallah big bushy beard, come all the way down here. Assalamu alaikum is always, putting his fingers through the beard, having a nice day. So then what happens? Stuff happens and he removes all of it. So the sheikh was saying when he comes to first he'll start going with a scarf around his chin. It's cold, even in the summer, because he doesn't want people to see now. The big beard is gone. So he comes with a scarf every time. And first he starts to pray at another masjid who didn't see him before with the big beard. After a while the scarf comes off. And then he'll come back to his original masjid. And then after a while he gets so used to it. The sheikh was just trying to use it to illustrate how when you get used to the sin, there's nothing wrong with it. You just look at it, there's nothing wrong. And this can, apply to any other sin. Someone gets used to it, then they get this high from creating that sin, from doing it. And they go and they strive and they go through efforts. Just like someone who's addicted, who wants to do that thing, they do anything possible and spend any amount of money to commit the sin. Just as a note here, the people who, when do you get reward for not doing a sin? For example, someone wanted to go out and get drunk, for example. And then his car wouldn't start, so he couldn't go buy alcohol. Does he get reward for not doing a sin? Why not? Intention was to go, but he didn't go. So, now, because you do know that if you intend to do something bad and then you don't do it, you get a reward. But you said this guy doesn't get a reward. Why not? Yes, sir. Go ahead. Yeah, no, my grandmother. Yes, you. That just came out. I always say that to my students. Sorry. He was young. I just said it. Go ahead. I don't know how you spoke when I told him. Okay, but go ahead. Good. Okay, good. MashaAllah. Jazakallah khair, young man. Very good. It wasn't that out of fear of Allah he didn't do it. I like that, huh? It's not that out of fear of Allah that he didn't do it. It was, the car wouldn't start. He still wanted to do the sin. He still longed for the sin. You get reward when you don't do it out of fear of Allah. If his car started and he thought about it, he said, Taqillah, and he turned it off, then he gets a reward. But also, like some scholars also say, caring and trying to hide the sin from the eyes of other people more than in front of not caring about Allah Azza wa Jal. They say that also could be more intense than the sin itself, because you're afraid people might see you, but you're not afraid that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala can see you. And that's why one of the descriptions of the Day of Judgment, the Day of Judgment has many, many names, Yawm al-Qiyamah, many names in the Quran, many descriptions. One of them, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala describes it in the Quran as يَوْمَ يَقُومُ الْأَشْهَادِ, the day when the witnesses will arise. So the scholars say it's given that name because there's so many witnesses for or against you on the Day of Judgment. And of course, first and foremost is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Allah Azza wa Jal, who sees everything that you do, and He knows what you conceal, and He knows what you reveal. So Allah Azza wa Jal is the first and foremost of all the witnesses. He sees everything that you do. And like we said earlier, people, they try to hide their deed from cameras, from security guards, from policemen, from the eyes of other human beings, from parents. They lock doors, turn off lights, close windows. They don't think to hide it from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So it's as if they make Allah the least important of the ones that can see Him. They make Allah the least important. So I care if this brother can see me, but I don't care that Allah can see me. You see, that's the horrible part of it. And like we said, the early Muslims and the righteous people are those, people of taqwa, are those that are constantly aware that Allah can see them. You may have heard one of the early Muslims, his name is Hatim al-Asam, rahimahullah, and he used to study with the sheikh, and the sheikh used to give him extra good treatment, unlike the other students. So they complained one day. They said, why do you treat him better than us? So he said, Hatim is not like the rest of you. And one day he wanted to illustrate that. And you know the story, he gives every one of them a chicken, right? And he tells them, go where no one can see you and slaughter the animal. So all of them go, and they come back, the animal slaughtered. But Hatim, when he comes back, it's still alive. And he's not faking it or anything, he's a sincere person. If he was faking it, his stories wouldn't have reached us now. So he tells him, why didn't you slaughter it? Why didn't you slaughter it? He said, you told me, go where no one can see you and slaughter the animal. And everywhere I went, Allah could see me. You see how he thinks? I mean, everyone else thought, okay, no one can see you, khalas, he goes in a little place, no human being can see them. He didn't say where no human can see, he just said where no one. But because he's thinking and always aware that Allah Azza wa Jal can see him, he immediately felt, okay, well, Allah can see me. Most people don't put Allah Azza wa Jal in the equation, they just think of other human beings. These are the people of taqwa. Constantly remember Allah Azza wa Jal is watching them. The Prophet ﷺ said that there will be people on the Day of Judgment whose flesh will fall off their faces out of shame when their sins are presented before Allah. And when their sins are being listed and presented in front of Allah, the flesh will fall out of their face out of shame from their sins. And these are people who, when they committed that sin, the last one they cared about was Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Ali radiallahu anhu said that on the Day of Judgment, an announcer will call us one by one. And they will call the person by his name and his parents' name. And the person will be frightened and ashamed. And so the person will not move and not be able to move. But the angels will know him because of the terror. So everyone is standing.